I think this is like one of the defining problems of our, like, psychologically that exists right now across the world. And it's this lack of friction on every single thing we do. And the less friction on everything, the easier it is to do the easiest thing. And to choose otherwise is really, really difficult.
One of the concerns with, kind of the rise of all these lonely single men was that there was going to be uprising in the streets. And,
technology's impact on dating and relationships, right?
Yes.
Like, I think that more is online, right? There's more dating apps. I forget the stat now. Is it like more than 50% of people meet online through a dating site?
Like, the last time it was checked, it was before the pandemic, and I think it was like at high 50s. So I bet it's probably like 60 or 70%.
Yeah. Do you think, because then relating that to like the bad habits, and it's almost like having something that's just easily accessible compared to forcing yourself to go out in the world and actually approach a woman and talk to her. Like, do you think that there's some downsides to dating apps in that way?
I'm actually, you know what, I thought about this a lot recently, and actually had somebody talk to me about this. I'm going to take a stronger position on this. I think that online dating apps, I think, are generally overwhelmingly positive. I'm going to say that, actually. So I think that the way that it used to work was people didn't move around as much, and we had different community building things that happened, especially through like churches and like friends and friends, or friends of friends and family friends that used to exist that don't really as much anymore. I think the research, I think it used to say that the majority of people would meet like new dating partners. I think it was usually through friends, like in friend groups. That's where we used to meet our partners. But as we've kind of become more atomized, we become more segregated, we're very quick to move off and live in these little apartments and work, and we don't really have churches anymore, and our friend groups are starting to exist more online. There isn't really like an opportunity, I think, in the real world to go out and actually find people of the opposite sex, especially depending on the type of guy you are. If you're working in like tech, like if you're a programmer or something, there's like one woman at work. You're like not gonna have much luck there.
And you may be working at home if you're a programmer.
Or work from home, yeah. So for a lot of these people, if you've stripped away like all of the old kind of like community infrastructure, they don't go to church anymore, they don't really have friends of friends anymore, and they're all living like scattered across the country. I have no fucking idea, like, if it wasn't for an online dating app, like where would you even go to meet like a guy or a girl? I don't know what the answer to that would be. I had somebody pushed me on that. I think I was doing like Vera Collins like 2 days ago, and he was like, hey, like people always shit on dating apps, but like, that's where I met my girlfriend. If there were no dating apps, what is the alternative? And that's always so funny because I've always like struggled with it on stream. Like, I have no idea. Like when you're in school, there's a million people to meet and talk to and date. But once you get out of school, especially if you're in a male-dominated industry, I have no idea where you go to find people. Because like you can give like the stereotypical answers of like go to like the bar, but I mean realistically, I don't know if that advice like
it's like one of the worst places.
Yeah, and it's like a 500-pound dude. It's like, what do you need to do? Like go like hit the gym and get shredded. And it's like, yeah, you could, but like the average like guy that's like at home that's never been in a bar or picked up a girl in a bar in his entire fucking life, like you're gonna teach this guy from zero to like PUA master in like 7 YouTube videos. Like there's no fucking shot. So I think in that sense, I think that the dating apps can be good and that at least they give you a place to find and connect to other people, because without that, I don't know like what the alternatives would be. But obviously I would say that what we had prior, where people were just in large groups of people and they were meeting people face to face and getting that type of interaction, we were forced to have those types of interactions. That'd be preferable to what we have today, but it just seems like society's kind of changed a lot from back then.
It has.
Well, if there were no dating apps, I feel like there would be a push for people to go out
Would there be?
and meet.
Yes.
I don't know, like which one came first?
Have you met any of these guys?
Or?
No offense, this is my fan base I'm talking about, but like, where the fuck? Because the problem is, to go back, we have a huge, I think this is like one of the defining problems of our, like psychologically that exists right now across the world. And it's this lack of friction on every single thing we do. And the less friction on everything, the easier it is to do the easiest thing. And to choose otherwise is really, really, really difficult. Because as humans, I mean, like if you think back to, like how we existed in like forests and shit, right? And you think of like, why does sugar taste so good? It's because it's very, very, very rare. You're not going to find these huge lumps of like processed foods and sugar everywhere, so of course they taste delicious. But like you don't even have any mechanisms in your body to fight against getting fat, because how the you get fat, right? You're chewing on like this uncooked meat all day. You're eating like roots and herbs and shit. Like it's just not going to happen, right? But if you put that type of machine in another environment and then you start removing all the friction, here's a ton of sugar. Here's the opportunity to sit down all day. Here's the opportunity to live a life online where you can have maximum fun and entertainment through an infinite amount of videos at your fingertips, an infinite amount of video games at your fingertips, an infinite amount of online social interactions at your fingertips. If you have that in front of you, who's ever going to make the choice to like, I'm going to find clothes, get a haircut, look decent, go to a bar, have real life social interactions where I might get shot down, spend money on alcohol. Holy fuck. That's like such a hard choice to make. Not to say that like you shouldn't make that choice, but I think that on a macro level in society, we've kind of removed all the friction from a lot of the kind of like dopamine hits that we get, and it's made it really hard to choose to do something other than like the easiest, nicest, most like packaged thing for us to access on the internet, I guess.
For the majority of men, it doesn't work. And I would say for the majority of women, it doesn't work unless it's hookup culture.
Mm-hmm. Well, I'm curious where the numbers are because
like women swipe on like 5% of guys, for example.
Women what? Oh.
Only swipe right on 5% of guys, like on Bumble or Tinder.
Mm-hmm.
Is that
where guys are 50%?
Well, is that bad? I'm trying to do the I hate stats; they're so complicated. But because theoretically, if 100% of women all swiped on 5% of guys, you could still have every guy getting swiped on, right? It's not like 100% of women are only swiping on the same 5% of guys, right?
No, that's what's happening. It's only the same.
No shot. I don't believe that. I don't think so.
Well, that's what the data says.
That it's only on those 5% of guys?
That's the top 5% of guys that I think get like 95% of the matches. And then after that, it's like there's another tier, but it's much less. And by the time you're like below 50, it's like 10 guys for every one woman. And then the other thing is that the way that Tinder is, for example, it's 25% women. So
yeah.
75% guys.
Yep.
Sure.
So
it's definitely rough, but I don't know, like if you took Tinder away, I don't know if these guys are going to like get out of the house to go and find people. It feels like we don't have any like real life places to send people.
Yeah.
Like I'm a really social person. I like talking to people. It was fun. Like and I have no idea where I would go. Like I talked to there's a guy called Playing with Fire, Alex. I want to do this at some point.
I know.
Like,
he's been on our show.
Yeah, I want to like go to bars and like try to pick up chicks. It would just be a really fun skill to
He's
learn.
in Miami too, so you can do
is.
it.
Yeah, I know. We've talked about it. It would be a fun thing to do, but like I've never done that before in my life. It would be a totally new environment for me. And like absent like online stuff, I have no idea like what communities. Like I'm way out of school. My work is cheating, so I won't do my work. But like if I was like, let's say I was a programmer or something, I wouldn't meet a single woman at work. Like I don't even know where the fuck I would go. I have no idea. The honest to God, the most, is funny as it is to say, because I hated doing this, the most I've ever had women just like cold approach me, my entire life was dyeing my hair blue. Because now a lot of people randomly, have
why?
hair
Because it's a niche market.
Yeah, I guess, yeah. So if you're looking at, a lot of women are like, oh my God, I like your hair. And I'm like, oh, okay, cool. It's kind of weird. Yeah, I've never had people say that to me before. So
But so from my experience, for example, most of my dating experience in my 20s and 30s, there wasn't an online. So I had to do that, and everybody else had to do it, and we did it. And it was one of those things where the one thing I liked about it is the fact that let's say I remember like I had a relationship with a woman when I was like 29, and we met in a bar. It wasn't a club, it was just a bar where you play darts and drink beers or whatever. But I remember, because of the fact that we both didn't have a lot of other options, it was one of those things where we gave it a real shot, and it ended up lasting a couple of years.
Of you. Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Because you don't have the other options there. It's like, that's why I always tell people, we might have spoken about this, how people are way too selective when it comes to the people they think they want to like pair off with. Because you think like, no MAGA Republicans, no women with dyed hair, no vegans, no, but like people will have like these huge checklists. It's like, you have no fucking idea until you meet somebody. There's a reason why 99% of people in grade school and in high school and in college will have a group of friends, and none of those people are selected for on any trait except for age and zip code, I guess, right? But you're thrown in with all random people, but eventually you like make friends. It'll happen at work, it'll happen in school, and if there are no alternatives, like I remember growing up, like you'd even do, it feels so weird because it's almost like another world, but like we'd go to like the bowling alley and there'd be like a lot of different people there. You'd go to like house parties, you go to like people's houses and actually see people in real life. And just by virtue, if you put somebody around somebody long enough, eventually they're going to start and eventually going to start dating. Like that's like a rule of the world.
Yeah, makes sense.
But now with all of these incredibly attractive, like I didn't have really the option to like play like League of Legends for 16 hours a day growing up. That type of environment didn't really exist, but now it does. And there's billions of dollars behind making it as attractive as possible to you and as accessible and as easy as possible. It's really hard to fight against those environments, you know? So like when you say, for instance, like of the viewer base or the user base on Tinder, 25% of women, where the f*** are all the women at that? And where are you supposed to go out and find them?
Yeah, I think they're out there. I think what's happening is that, at least from a lot of the women I've talked to or counseled, is that they are on Instagram and they're getting DMs from guys on Instagram, and that's how they're meeting. Because they don't want to go on the dating apps, but if they have a good Instagram, they will get DMs. And maybe it might be a lot or it might be a little, but it gives them an opportunity. And, you know, that's kind of the scariest thing. We did a whole couple actually, about monkey branching, is, you know, if your girlfriend has this really provocative Instagram account, she's going to get DMs. And if you're in a relationship with her, especially if she's not posting with you or things like that, like she's essentially single. Do you know what I mean? So
She'll be treated that way. Although I will say, have to be careful because men definitely did that in the past too, to where if you've got a wife, she's at home, gets kind of boring, but you're working a lot. Hot secretary shows up. Like a lot of guys will leave their fucking wives, or like not leave technically. Usually it'll just be like affairs and shit.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's always something you kind of have to balance out, is the prospect of like people upgrading, especially in my industry, or anything in entertainment, where if one person grows more than the other person, all of a sudden there could be like or if you've got like two obese people and one person starts losing a lot of weight and the other doesn't. Like, yeah, that's definitely a thing to keep in mind. Setting appropriate boundaries and stuff for managing online relationships is probably really important. Yeah.
But I think that's kind of where the women are, because
Right.
I don't know what the stats breakdown is, but my assumption is that there's many more women on Instagram than there are guys.
There are. And I think there's multiple reasons to why a woman would just keep her Instagram going versus jumping on a dating app. And that's, well, she already has it up, right? It's like less work than actually creating a separate account on a dating site. But then also for any man that reaches out to her, like she can go to his account and potentially see more about him
That makes sense.
compared to on a dating site where he can provide like limited information. You know?
Yeah.
And I think
So
that
it's still pictures, but at the same time, it might be pictures with his family or, you know,
Right.
Prove they're not
doing-
a serial killer.
right.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
That they're either pre-selection is
crazy.
involved, because maybe if there
Right.
was a ex-girlfriend still on there, that type of deal. So it makes sense for women to do that versus be on the because on the dating apps they get spammed,
Yes.
and then what ends up happening is that, you know, they just pick the most attractive guys, which makes sense.
Yeah, I think
So
that
that's human nature.
Yeah, I would say for women's main complaint on dating sites, it's a few things. It's one, it's not a relationship thing, you know, with that guy that is reaching out to her. He's just looking to hook up with her, and he makes that clear in the beginning. Like there's red flags with that, and she's there for a relationship. So she gets tired
hold on.
of
Firstly, that's awesome. Okay. If a guy is willing to make it clear in the beginning, the girl should be thankful for that, because a lot of
Well,
guys
that
will
is
f- with
true.
you and
Yes.
like pretend that they want to date.
Oh.
Yeah,
There's a lot of those guys.
That is very true. I totally agree with you on that.
Yeah,
yes.
okay, sorry,
to
go
be
ahead.
upfront and honest, yes. But from like a girl's perspective, she just gets tired of it either way. That, you know,
Sure, yeah, I
she's
can
looking
understand
for
it.
one thing and then she just keeps on getting reached out for another. And then secondly, there's also plenty of people that are like in open relationships just looking for another partner. And somehow
But it's more sexual, obviously, versus
It's
having a
just
real
sexual.
connection.
right.
The fucking stereotype that I always hear is there'll be one girl who's like pretty fucking hot, and sometimes she doesn't always even have it in her profile, but they're shopping for, they call them unicorns. They're looking for another girl that wants to be like a third in like some threesome. But then when you finally see the guy, there's a reason why there were no pictures posted of him, because he's a fucking uggo. It's like some Shrek shit going on, and it's like, what the fuck, yeah.
How does that happen?
I don't know, but I've heard there's a lot of that going on, where if there's one girl and she's shopping for a threesome on Tinder and there are no pictures of her boyfriend, it's because he's fucking, yeah, there's some shit
There
going
you
on.
go.
Makes
Look out
sense.
for those.
Yeah. So I'm wondering from your perspective, because, you know, you've got this huge following, not only from from YouTube, but from other platforms as well. And you've got a big name, and I don't know if you have an Instagram, and I'm assuming you do.
Yeah.
Okay, so is that kind of how you find the majority of your sex?
It depends. So nowadays, I would say it comes through like my career. Like people know who I am, so they'll like reach out on Instagram or email sometimes, or just like random shit. Or I'll see people like at conventions or whatever. Sometimes it's like other streamer people. Just depends on what's going on. But and this is why we need better data on this. There needs to be better research on like the Tinder shit and everything. When I was in California, I was going through like a phase of my life. I just moved from Omaha to California, and I wanted to find people that like were not in the streamer world. This is going to sound really self-aggrandizing, I guess, but like there's a feeling when I talk to a stranger who doesn't know anything about me that's actually like really cool sometimes. Because oftentimes like I start talking to a girl and she's like, oh yeah, like I'm a big fan of you, like remember when you said this and did that, and it's like yeah I was there, I remember. Yeah, I do remember.
We joked about that yesterday.
No, I'm not like knocking you guys,
because that's what's happened to Emily a couple times.
Oh sure, yeah people know your stuff, and sometimes it's fun to be like, oh, like I can reveal pieces of my life to somebody, and it's like I feel like I'm back in high school, like I'm talking like a normal human being to somebody. So I would do Tinder a lot in California. I wouldn't mention that I was like a streamer or a YouTuber. Well, back then I was mainly just a streamer. And I did okay. I'm not like, like smashing like fucking 9s and 10s constantly, but like there were at least like 3 or 4 girls that I was friends with and had like long-term-ish kind of sexual relationships with. That was like super fun for me, that I really enjoyed. So like I've done the Tinder thing. Now it's mainly just like Instagram stuff. Now I've gotten bigger that like people will recognize me anyway. So I don't know if I'm sorry, it sounds super obsessed, but like I don't know if I trust all the time. We're like, oh, I have no idea who you are, blah, 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 blah. So now it's mainly just like fans or streamers or people that are kind of in this world already too. Yeah.
And that probably has helped a lot. Like, because I feel like for men that are aging, a lot of times their options and opportunity, especially on dating sites, decreases.
Maybe up to a certain age. I think if you're a guy, I feel like up to 35, I think you're still probably pretty good to like reach pretty low into the 20s, I think, because I think that for the things that make men attractive, assuming you're on a good path in life, I think that those traits grow like dramatically in your late 20s and early 30s, such that like if there's a guy that's really well put together, he can do his fucking laundry, he's got an apartment with more than just a box spring sitting on the fucking floor, and he's like not socially or emotionally retarded, I think that this guy can go into like a college and like pull like pretty well, just because he's got like, because as a guy, like the things that society or women tend to value from men are things that you like really start to build upon like in your late 20s, early 30s, mid 30s, right? Maybe even past that if you are still building whatever. So yeah, I think the guys are generally okay into their 30s. It's not as scary. Now, if your life sucks, like your 30s are kind of like an amplifier to your 20s, right? Like if your 20s sucked, your 30s are probably really going to suck unless you're doing something to turn it around. But if you're building in your 20s and your 30s are probably going to go really well. Yeah, I would just say kind of probably depends on how your life is going. I compare it to work from home, where like work from home, if you have like a really active social life and everything before the pandemic and you're doing work from home, it's like even better. It's a huge amplifier. Like now you can see friends whenever. Now it's fucking awesome. But if you had no friends, you weren't getting out very often, dude, I had people sending me emails that like the Starbucks barista that I saw on my way to work was the only human contact I had, and I haven't had that for 8 months. The only person I see now is my DoorDash driver if I run out in time to see him when they drop my shit off. And it's like, yeah. So yeah, it super depends, yeah.
Yeah, and I think that's happening more and more often as far as, so, for the Gen Z type of guys, because I've worked with a lot of them, and, again, of the sample sizes, people are coming to me, so there's some issues, clearly, but at the same time, I think there's also a lot of guys that are in the same boat but don't come to me. And so, and the reason they come to me is saying, I'm depressed, and then I'll kind of break down their life, and I'll say, okay, tell me about your life. And they'll say, well, kind of like the story you talked about, except for the male version, is that, they get up and if they're in college, they're taking online courses, but they have like 3 screens open. And sometimes they'll be so smart about it that they'll take like a screenshot of them and replace that in the Zoom link. So the professor doesn't even know that he's not listening while they're playing, one of the video games. And a lot of these guys, it's just so commonplace now, barely ever leave the house. Yeah. And they don't even take showers on a regular basis.
Yeah, because why would you if you're never leaving and you live alone, right? Yeah, I can. No, I mean, I'm not saying you shouldn't take showers. But yeah, I can understand like.
But a lot of these guys are still living with their parents.
Sure.
Doing that.
Oh, geez, yeah.
So it's the combination of living with your parents and then not really leaving the home and not showering. And then you have to, but it's so commonplace. I'm not saying everybody's doing it, but comparatively to your generation or mine, way, way more.
Yeah, I mean, housing has gotten more expensive. Everybody wants to live in like 10 different cities in the United States, and that's the only place we want to go to. It's a bad trend for sure.
And these were guys that typically were gaming for multiple hours?
They were gaming or they were watching streamers for multiple hours at a time. You know, weed smoking was a lot. That kind of went hand in hand with that as well.
Yeah.
So it's something that, you know, because one of the concerns with, you know, kind of the rise of all these lonely single men was that there was going to be uprising in the streets. And, you know, with some of, you know, the kind of incel guys, that has happened as far as shootings and things like that, where they've written manifestos about, you know, kind of the way it is. But I think the majority of guys is that they've gone inward, not out in the streets and rioting, because of the fact that they're not able to connect. So they do the streaming, they video game themselves, they go on OnlyFans, you know, that type of thing. And it's almost becoming like the norm, but they're not healthy in a way that they're able to have a conversation like we're having right now. Or even to have showered to do that.
I think there's a huge problem with like emotionally retarded men.
But don't you think like men at their baseline are kind of emotionally retarded?
I don't think it has to be that way. I think there's a lot of stuff that goes into there's so much that goes into this. Like I've heard, for instance, that men tend to be more physical when it comes to expressing emotion. Women tend to be more verbal when it comes to expressing emotion. If you have a little girl that is like crying or having an emotional outburst, there are like ways where she's like consoled through that. Like, this is how you process emotions, this is how you do things. So women like grow up and not naturally. Women grow up and they're trained to have like a better
socialized
handle on like how to do it. Whereas for like boys, like usually we want to punch something or hit something or throw something, and you're immediately like, there's never a healthy, like parents won't buy you a punching bag. They'll tell you to stop hitting the wall or stop throwing things or do whatever. So you're very much like shut down at an early age and stunted kind of emotionally as a guy, and you're trained that way, socialized to grow up and not know how to process emotions. I think that some things that explain the differences between behaviors between men and women can go through the emotional maturity that both sides have. And I see this huge gulf sometimes in the emotional maturity between men and women that make it hard for men to talk to women and make it hard for men to talk to themselves, like other men sometimes. So here's a stat. I think that it's like 37% of single women are okay being single and don't care. And I think that number's like 24% for men. And one of the explanations I've heard for that is that women friendships are really, really awesome. When you're a woman, you go out with somebody, they come back, what'd you guys do? How did you feel? What are you going to do in the future? Blah, blah, blah. You know, like all these things or whatever. And it's like for a guy, like he might be like ready to fucking kill himself tomorrow. He's drawing the plans up, you know, and his friend's like, how you doing, dude? And he's like, okay. And it's like, all right. And that's like it. And you can see this in the differences in so many things. Like, for one guy to talk about his sexual relationship with his wife to another guy is like an almost unheard of thing. It's very rare that men will share sexual things about it. But for women, it's super common. So common that sometimes, yeah, they're like showing like, yeah, here's my husband sent me this yesterday. Like, isn't this like cute or blah blah? Like, they're just like, they're way more open about it. And it sucks because on one end, for like, I'll say like the left, there's like no examples for positive masculinity because they hate fucking men, okay? I know they don't really, but like they spend so much time focusing on like the toxic aspects of masculinity, they don't really talk about like how to do it positively. And on the right, they try to make it sound like, well, this is just the way that men are. They are toxic. They're saying this is the way men are and they're supposed to be that way. And it's like, well, come on. Like you, like sometimes it feels like from the red pill perspective, like a guy can be one of two things. He's either this fucking stoic, like Chuck Norris, like nothing bothers me, like I watched my whole family die in front of me yesterday. I'm eating a steak right now. I don't fucking care. I'm just moving forward as a man. Or you're like a blubbering crybaby, you know, blue-haired fucking loser with a septum piercing who just cries when he sees a puppy on the street, right? And it's like, no, like, come on. There can be like a middle ground where you're a guy who, when you talk to a woman, you can have like an emotionally available conversation. You don't have to be crying all the time or whatever, but you have to be able to communicate without expecting the woman to be your mom or without you coming across like a fucking sociopath. And, yeah, whether it's those early aspects of socialization as children, whether it's like the media we consume or the content creators that are speaking to like men, I feel like there's just so like horrible. There's like no guidance for like how men can kind of be like emotionally open and available to people, and they just get such horrible messages from both sides. It really drives me crazy. And then to wrap it all around, I feel like that contributes a lot sometimes to the unevenness in dating markets, to where women are more content being single. They're like, oh, f- it. Like I got really good relationships with my girlfriends, and for men, it's like the only time I've ever been able to emotionally open up to anybody in my life is when I have a girlfriend. If I don't have that, I'm like, fuck, you know. And it's like, geez, yeah.
Yes. No, I totally agree with that. I do see that getting better, though. And I honestly think one of the reasons is the manosphere, is that you see other guys talking to each other, and it's one of those things where it kind of makes it okay. And so, like, I've noticed that at the gym, for example, after my workouts, I'll go into the sauna, and we'll have like, it's almost kind of like a bar atmosphere in a weird way, because the lights are dim, and you have that,
and you're like chilling, and
you
you
get
just
the
work
buzz
out.
from working out, and so guys will open up. But what I'm noticing is that's not the younger guys that are talking; it's the middle-aged guys and the older guys that are talking. But one of the research I've done is that the difference between men and women is that women are very comfortable having face-to-face conversations like you and I are right now, where men are very comfortable having side-to-side conversations.
Okay.
And so that's why, like, the bar is a popular spot, because you can watch the game or whatever, and the guy's sitting to your right, and you're having like these in-depth conversations, but you're kind of staring at the game. And I don't know have you ever heard of men's sheds?
No.
Okay, so they're like a big thing. They started in Australia, and they're all throughout Europe now. Of course, in the United States, like it's the last country to really adopt this. But essentially, what they are is that these sheds that are for men to work together, and they, sometimes they have like beer there, sometimes they have just coffee or food. But men work on projects together. But the whole reason for them is for men to get together and be able to socialize. And it's been really effective in these countries. Again, it's just a shame that a lot of, and any guy who's a guy, no matter what, obviously their socioeconomic status is or whatever, is invited, and there's no cost. And so it's something that I think those are kind of great ideas, because typically, again, you're not going to see two guys going out for coffee.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
That's way healthier too, because the typical is go to the bar and drink.
Exactly.
Like there's always alcohol involved.
Yes.
I feel like.
Well, with guys, I think it's either there's alcohol, even when they golf, a lot of times there's alcohol, but it's usually around some kind of activity. And I think that's why the gaming thing is a big deal, because you're focused on the game, and even if you're not in the same room, you're still having conversations. And I bet that's probably where the streaming thing came in. It was because of the fact that maybe the games just weren't enough. Now you wanted that.
Maybe, yeah. This is hard, and I don't know, because I think I have massive ADHD.
Okay.
So I don't know how much of this applies to all men, or if it's just my brain. Just recently I was in Georgia, and I had a friend, because I've always wondered if I have ADHD. And I was like, oh, you should try some of my Adderall or whatever. And it's like, okay, fine. And I tried a pretty hefty dose. I had this XR stuff, and man, for the first time in my fucking life, I went out with some friends, and I just sat there, and I was so chill, and I was present, and I was content to like listen to everybody. If two women can talk to each other and just like be totally engrossed in that conversation, that's a very enviable skill to have. Because like if you're, this is very rarely do I give like, you follow this advice or kill yourself. Okay, this is one of those things where like if you go on a date with somebody, if it's like first, second date, if you pull out your phone one time, the amount of like you on board that you're sending to that other person, it's over. It is like the worst, unless it's like literally like, hold on, like I think my daughter is dying, I need to check something. Like don't even like a glance, it just communicates like this horrible message. I'm guessing that like guys are probably a little bit more scatterbrained in general, or like we're a little bit more all over the place, so maybe guys don't mind it as much when they're like doing an activity and like doing something else. But like that's very much my mindset, and I have trouble even connecting my wife sometimes, because she wants me, I joke with her where I was like, okay, you want us to go out to eat, you want me to stare at you for an hour, she's like, yes. And I'm like, I can't do that, I'm gonna kill myself. Okay. I'm like, I can't do that with any of my guy friends even, but yeah,
especially with your guy friends, I would think that would be more uncomfortable.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. So I don't know if that's a guy thing or if that's like an emotional condition thing or what, but yeah, being able to have like conversations with people where you're just like staring at them and like talking to them and being present, that's a really good skill. If you can do that as a guy, you're ahead of so many other guys when it comes to like communicating with people. Holy shit. Yeah.
Even on the phone, because I mean, I'll talk to my friend, my female friend, for like an hour on the phone.
Yeah,
easy.
guys don't
like
do that.
I don't think any guy does that.
We used to.
Yeah.
I
In my
remember
generation,
that shit. Yeah, because they would call, and as soon as the girl would call, you'd have to sit there and you'd have to wait for like 20 seconds because you're waiting to hear the fucking phone click to see if mom or dad picked up, if they were going to listen on the conversation. Yeah, I remember that.
I remember that
way,
too.
way back in the day. Just as the dating standards started, I was sometime around when I was in high school. I think the iPhone came out in 2007. I think.
Yeah.
Or that's when I graduated high school. Is 2007. Texting had just become a thing, and like when I was like in like the middle of high school, like my sophomore and junior year. What a horrible fucking thing. Sometimes you could be girlfriend, boyfriend, and not talk to each other for like 3 or 4 days, and it would be okay. But as soon as texting, dude, that changed in like 1 year, where it was like a requirement that you had your phone constantly, and if you weren't like, if you went like a night without saying goodnight or I love you or whatever, it's like fucking game over and shit. Yeah.
Yes. So that's totally changed the dynamic of things as well. So it doesn't help guys, become more social. It becomes less because everything's through text or chat or whatever. And then it's something where, you don't have to have that face-to-face contact, and you can take as much time as you want to respond to these messages.
Again, the friction thing, right? You get to do everything at your convenience whenever you
Yes.
want to, right? It's like literally like walking up like 10 flights of stairs, or it's like taking an elevator so that you can like walk up like a Stairmaster, right? It's like that's what our whole life has become,
Yeah.
is taking the elevator to get to the Stairmaster. Like having that choice on everything, I think, is kind of like fucking our brains over, yeah.